Welcome to this explainer. Let's get right into it, because there's a specific kind of person who's bought 5 different make money online courses and started none of them. Here's the actual psychology behind why.
I just want to let that statement hang in the air for a second. You might be nodding your head right now, maybe recognizing a friend, or honestly, perhaps feeling a little bit called out. And hey, if you are, I want to immediately validate that. We've pretty much all been there at some point. This isn't a personal failure, and it's definitely not a reflection of your work ethic. Before we rush to judge, we really need to look at this psychologically and break down the massive contradictions sitting right at the heart of this behavior. Because on paper, this looks completely, utterly irrational. Picture someone who has very little spare money, someone who's actively stressed about their bills. Now imagine them taking that incredibly scarce resource and spending it on a high-ticket course that promises to fix everything. And then, the ultimate paradox, they never follow through. It makes zero logical sense to spend money you desperately need only to completely ignore the exact tool that's supposed to make you money back. So, what does this all mean? Well, it means it's not laziness. You aren't broken. Instead, your brain is just getting caught in a web of 4 highly predictable psychological mechanisms that quietly keep you stuck. Okay, let's dive right into this. Mechanism 1, the illusion of progress. This first one is fundamentally a really clever, really sneaky trick your brain plays on itself. To get it, we have to look at how we're wired. The illusion of progress means that the simple act of buying a course triggers a massive relief and reward response in your head. It feels remarkably similar to actually doing the hard work. From an evolutionary standpoint, our ancestors got a huge dopamine hit for gathering scarce resources, like hoarding food for the winter. Today, downloading a massive zip file of business templates triggers that exact same gathering instinct. You click buy, your brain gets a hit of dopamine, you feel super satisfied, and paradoxically, that exact satisfaction quietly kills your urge to do the much harder part, which is actually opening the files and doing the work. Your brain literally logs the purchase itself as the accomplishment. Let's paint a really visceral picture of this because the contrast is staggering. Think about the exact moment you're typing your credit card info into a sleek checkout page. In that moment, you feel calm, you feel totally optimistic, and you feel completely on track. You're riding high on the promise of a better future. Now, contrast that peaceful feeling with the day you actually have to sit down, turn on the camera, and record your first video, or maybe struggle through writing the copy for your first product listing. Boom. That actual execution brings massive anxiety, stress, and imposter syndrome. And since human brains are hardwired to actively seek comfort and run from pain, we naturally drift right back to the soothing calm of a checkout cart instead of facing the terrifying anxiety of creation. Which brings us to mechanism 2, sunk cost and hope stacking. Now let's see how this compounds into a real structural problem. This is the incredibly ironic phase where your past failures actually fund your future purchases. Imagine you buy a giant course on freelance copywriting. You get that initial illusion of progress, but eventually the friction of finding clients is just too high and you fail to start. A purely logical machine would just stop right there, but a human brain? It goes out and buys a second course, let's say a course on AI prompting. Internally, you start justifying this brand new purchase as a magical way to rescue the value of that first abandoned course. You convince yourself that AI is going to seamlessly do the hard copywriting work you were avoiding. You are literally stacking fresh hope on top of a sunk cost.
We have all whispered this exact phrase to ourselves at midnight, bathed in the glow of a laptop. This time, I'll actually finish it. This one's different. But here is the slightly cynical reality we need to uncover. Course marketing is expertly, ruthlessly designed to exploit this exact vulnerability. The copywriters writing those sales pages, they know full well you failed before. They map their entire funnels to target people who feel stuck. That's why they use carefully curated testimonials specifically designed to reactivate your hope and give you an emotional cleanse, rather than just handing you a dry, boring syllabus. They aren't selling a new textbook. They are selling the intoxicating feeling of a completely fresh start.
Moving on to mechanism 3, the identity versus action gap. Here, the diagnosis shifts away from chasing dopamine and moves toward how fiercely we protect our own egos. Think about the act of preparing. Simply owning the course, endlessly organizing the PDFs, and rewatching the introductory mindset module allows you to safely identify as a hustler. It totally protects your self-image. You can proudly tell your friends you're an entrepreneur. But attempting it, actually trying to execute the business model, that means you might fail, and struggling visibly threatens that shiny new identity. Making a real attempt carries the terrifying, vulnerable risk of visible, public failure. And because of that deep-seated fear of failure, something tragic happens. Preparation morphs from a temporary runway into a permanent, highly comfortable hiding spot. Preparation actually becomes the destination itself, instead of just the step right before taking action. Simply having the login credentials grants you the coveted identity of a business owner, but without ever demanding any real risk. It is exactly how you end up with a beautifully color-coded, hyper-organized Notion workspace, but absolutely zero real-world customers.
Finally, mechanism 4, selling hope, not skills. Let's follow the money back to the people orchestrating this endless loop, because there's a very distinct reason behind the madness. And this brilliantly illustrates the difference between two business models. Selling hope is an incredibly lucrative model because hope is highly repeatable and infinitely repurchasable. It sells a sweeping identity and a massive dream outcome. On the flip side, selling a concrete skill, like say how to format an advanced Excel spreadsheet, well, that's finishable. Once you know how to do it, you don't buy a course on it again. It's a one-time purchase. Sellers naturally profit exponentially more from selling you an outcome and an identity because hope is a renewable resource. If they just sold you a concrete, finishable skill, the purchasing cycle would abruptly end. The underlying architecture of the whole industry actually relies on you staying stuck in the loop. So, taking all 4 of these powerful psychological mechanisms into account, it prompts a deeply uncomfortable but totally necessary question. We have to ask ourselves, are you actually doing research, or are you just preparing?
It is astonishingly easy to fool ourselves here. We fall right into the trap of disguised procrastination. I mean, think about the sheer dopamine hit of building massive, hours-long YouTube playlists of I tested this side hustle videos. Curating all that information tricks your brain into feeling incredibly productive. It feels like vital research. But let's have a genuine beat of self-aware honesty together. Endlessly watching test videos, analyzing other people's revenue dashboards, scrolling forums, it frequently becomes just another cozy form of preparing. It creates the illusion of momentum while keeping you perfectly safe from the risk of actually starting. All right, let's talk about breaking the loop, the antidote. We certainly aren't going to leave you hanging without a path forward. Let's pivot from the diagnosis to the cure. Because what separates the people who stay stuck from the people who escape isn't more research or better planning. The antidote is remarkably simple, and it's all about breaking that psychological friction. Step 1 is to pick the absolute cheapest, fastest possible first action tied to whatever course you've already bought. Do not promise yourself you'll build a whole website today. No way. Commit to writing one single headline for 10 minutes. Step 2 is to do that one microscopic thing before you are allowed to buy absolutely anything else. You have to force yourself from passive consumption into active execution. Shrink the requirement down until it is so laughably small that it's physically impossible for your brain to say no. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to carry with you as you close out of this explainer and get back to your day. You don't need a 6th course. You need to finish the first page of the one you've already got. Stop researching, stop preparing. Go take that very first messy, uncomfortable step right now. Thank you so much for exploring the fascinating psychology behind this with me, and I will see you in the next explainer.